Now, I purchased a lot of this Meranti wood, which is 6mm thick, from a boat builder. They use it obviously to build the boats, and these are the offcuts that they're too short for what they're doing. So it's their scrap wood, but it can be quite useful for small projects around the house. And because this wood isn't large enough for the purpose I need, I'm going to glue 3 pieces together to give me a wider board. I'll then rip that in half and it'll provide me with 2 boards of 1.5 pieces each. That way I'll be able to get the most use out of this material that is probably too small to use as a shelf, just using the 5cm thickness it has. I purchased these very small clamps recently, and I found them extremely helpful for this sort of glue up. I never thought I would. I've had the larger clamps for a long time, but when you're dealing with small pieces of timber like this, which, like I say, are only about 6mm thick, these small clamps work better. They don't put as much pressure on, and they don't deform the wood, but they do provide enough pressure for the glue to hold. And here I'm adding some clamping coils. It's just a couple of pieces of wood with some packing tape to try and help the glue not stick to it. It doesn't need a lot of pressure. They're not being deformed by the clamps, so it's just to do what I can to try and keep the pieces of wood as close to each other as they can be. And obviously people can do this in different ways. Some people might use a table saw or a hand saw. I have the bandsaw set up, so for this material I'm going to use the bandsaw. I often use hand tools, but I do find the bandsaw quite helpful. And now I have the material cut. I'm just going to have a look at it, see if there's any flaws, see if there's anything wrong with the glue up. I'm going to check the appearance of the wood, see if there's any particular piece that I want to be on display more than others, and just decide how the rest of the project's going to go. And although I'm not working to plans, I've got a rough idea of the size of space available to me, so I've built this frame to be the maximum size it can be to fit within the space I've got available, and everything else will work around that. So I'm just deciding on the joints I'm going to be using for this project. I'm not entirely sure why I took this approach, but I used the shelves as a guide for the spaces between the side pieces, and I then clamped with corner clamps the top and bottom pieces during the glue up to give the full width of the cabinet. This resulted in the cabinet being a few millimetres shorter than originally intended, but it did provide a way of neatening up the cabinet at the end from any kind of misalignments. So whilst you watch this glue up in progress, why don't you let me know in the comments what you think? How would you have gone about building shelves for some boxes, tea and coffee boxes like this? Would you have sought out different materials? Would you have used bigger, 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch timber? Would you have used the 6mm timber that I've used here and made it in a different way, maybe laminated them together to provide thicker material. The risk obviously with this is there's a very small amount of glue joint here, and a substantial knock and the cabinet could fall apart. I'm relying on the fact that this is only holding very little weight to be strong enough for its purpose. But obviously there is risks in using timber this thin. So what do you think? Leave it in the comments what ideas you might have used. Do you work with scrap wood and make the best of it? Or do you really need the right size wood for the project you're doing? So here you can see it all in clamps, and in the background, just to the left of the glue up, there is a piece of wood where I've laminated 3 pieces of timber together. That I'm going to use as the attachment for the cabinet, so that it'll glue to the back of the cabinet and be screwed to the wall, because this frame itself isn't strong enough to support itself without a little bit more bracing. And now the final step is just to glue in those pieces. Clean out any glue you can, and this project will be sanded and oiled and added to the wall. I'm not going to show you the finishing process for this one. I've done that in other videos, so I hope you've enjoyed this project and I look forward to hearing what you think about it. If you've enjoyed this, I've got plenty of other projects in my playlist, and there'll be more coming, so subscribe and you'll be able to see more of this sort of project.